Intro. Before the pyramids rose in Egypt, before Babylon's hanging gardens bloomed, and long before the Great Wall snaked across China, there thrived a forgotten civilization, a people who built cities with symmetry, who engineered with precision, and who lived without kings or conquest. This is the Indus Valley Civilization, a land of mysterious scripts, sprawling urban centers, and a society shrouded in silence. Join me on a journey 4,500 years into the past as we rediscover a world both ancient and ahead of its time. This is the story of one of humanity's earliest urban marvels and the mysteries it left behind. Chapter 1. Discovery of a Lost Civilization. Our journey begins not in ancient times, but in the modern era, the early 1920s. The British Raj governs the Indian subcontinent. Steam trains snake across the countryside. And somewhere near a sleepy town in the Punjab, a railway engineer notices something odd. While sourcing bricks for construction, workers come across thousands of perfectly shaped, kiln-fired bricks, lying scattered across the fields. Unbeknownst to them, they are standing atop the ruins of a lost city. A city buried for over 4,000 years. Harappa. Enter Sir John Marshall, Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India, a man with a passion for the ancient past. When reports from Harappa reach his desk, he dispatches a team of archaeologists. What they find astounds them. Beneath layers of earth lies not a simple village, but a vast city with wide streets, massive walls, granaries, and mysterious artifacts. The scale is unprecedented. Then, another site is uncovered, far to the south, near the banks of the Indus River, Mohenjo-Daro. This new site mirrors Harappa's architecture almost exactly. Identical brick dimensions, similar city layouts. Suddenly, archaeologists realize this isn't an isolated find. This is evidence of an entire civilization, a forgotten chapter of human history. And it changes everything we thought we knew about the ancient world. Over the next few decades, more cities are uncovered. Kalibangan in Rajasthan, Dholavira in Gujarat, Lothal by the sea. By the mid-20th century, over 1,000 sites linked to this civilization have been found, stretching across modern-day Pakistan, northwest India, and even into eastern Afghanistan. The world begins to realize that long before the glory of Greece, before the builders of the pyramids laid their first stones, there thrived a culture of stunning complexity, one that left no dynasties, no great conquests, only silence and stone. The Harappans, as they came to be known, were builders, traders, artisans, and perhaps philosophers. But unlike other ancient peoples, they left no grand monuments, no known temples, no statues of kings, only cities, clean, logical, elegant, and filled with mystery. Chapter 2. The Geography. Land of rivers and extremes. To understand the Indus Valley Civilization, we must first understand the land that shaped it. Spanning over 1 million square kilometers, it was the largest of the world's early civilizations, surpassing Mesopotamia and Egypt in scale. It stretched from the snow-fed foothills of the Himalayas in the north to the sun-baked shores of the Arabian Sea in the south, from the arid plains of eastern Iran to the fertile banks of the Ganges Basin in the east. At its heart flowed the mighty Indus River, one of the longest rivers in the world, and its tributaries, the Ravi, Sutlej, Beas, and the now dry Ghaggar Hakra. These rivers were lifelines. Every year, the monsoons would flood the plains, depositing nutrient-rich silt across the valley. The result? Some of the most fertile farmland in the ancient world. Here, the Harappans cultivated wheat, barley, millet, peas, and perhaps most impressively, cotton. In fact, the Indus Valley may have been the first civilization to cultivate and spin cotton for textiles. With a stable food surplus, cities could grow. Craftsmen, traders, scribes, and builders began to shape a society that would astonish the world thousands of years later. But geography was not only a gift, it was a risk. The same rivers that nourished life could turn treacherous. Seasonal floods could destroy homes. Droughts could kill crops. And over centuries, the very course of rivers could shift, leaving once thriving cities stranded far from water. The Gagar, once a strong and possibly sacred river, gradually dried up, possibly due to tectonic shifts or changes in rainfall patterns. Entire cities may have been abandoned as their water sources disappeared. Was it this unpredictable environment that led to the civilization's mysterious decline? Or did climate change, combined with overfarming and natural disasters, gradually unravel the threads of a delicate urban tapestry? The geography of the Indus Valley was both its foundation and its fate. It allowed a brilliant civilization to bloom in harmony with the land. But in the end, it may have been nature, ever changing, ever powerful, that swept it all away. Chapter 3. The Great Cities. Urban Wonders of the Bronze Age. In the ancient world, cities rose with little rhyme or reason, crammed together, winding, chaotic, but not in the Indus Valley. Here, over 4,500 years ago, people built cities with vision, with order. Take Mohenjo-Daro, one of the largest cities of the Indus civilization. Its name means mound of the dead, but in its prime, it was very much alive. The city was laid out with mathematical precision, a grid system of wide streets intersecting at right angles, dividing neighborhoods into perfectly defined blocks. This was not accidental. It was city planning in the Bronze Age. Most homes were made from uniform, kiln-fired bricks, measuring about 7 by 14 x 28 centimeters. A 1:2:4 ratio followed throughout the civilization. Some houses were simple, one-room structures. Others were large, multi-room dwellings, with interior courtyards, second floors, and even private wells. Indoor bathrooms and latrines weren't luxuries. They were standard. Wastewater was channeled into an underground drainage system, covered with stone slabs and regularly cleaned. This was sanitation at a scale unheard of in the ancient world. Even Rome, thousands of years later, didn't match this level of civil engineering in its earliest days. Every major Indus city, from Harappa to Dolavira, Kalibangan to Lothal, shared these urban traits. It was as if they followed a central code of construction, a blueprint passed between distant cities. In the center of Mohenjo-Daro stood a structure as enigmatic as it is impressive. The Great Bath, a massive 12-meter-long tank built from tightly fitted bricks, sealed with bitumen, and surrounded by steps and colonnades. It's one of the oldest public water tanks ever discovered, likely used for ritual purification or community bathing. The presence of such a structure suggests a society that placed importance on cleanliness, ritual, and public life, possibly spiritual, possibly social. Nearby stood massive granaries, with brick platforms, ventilation systems, and spacious storage bays. These were no humble barns. They suggest a centrally managed food system, where surplus grain could be stored and redistributed, possibly in times of flood or drought. Many homes were strategically oriented to catch the prevailing winds, an early form of passive cooling, long before the invention of fans or air conditioning. All of this points to something astonishing. These were not chaotic settlements. They were the work of skilled architects, planners, and civic leaders, people who valued efficiency, hygiene, and harmony. And yet, nowhere do we find grand palaces, no towering ziggurats, no statues of kings. The Indus cities seem to have been built for the people, not for the glorification of rulers. It was a civilization that elevated collective order over royal spectacle, a society that thrived in balance with its environment and with itself. Today, these silent streets and scattered bricks are all that remain. But once, these were living cities, thoughtfully designed, carefully built, beautifully maintained. They were, in every sense, cities ahead of their time. Chapter 4. Daily Life and Culture. The heartbeat of the Indus Valley. We often remember ancient civilizations by their kings, their wars, their monuments. But the soul of a society lives in its people. In the Indus Valley, life was organized, vibrant, and surprisingly modern. These were not just ruins of stone and brick, but neighborhoods, workshops, and homes, full of rhythm and routine, urban life and domestic architecture. Citizens lived in well-planned homes, typically built around a central open-air courtyard, a design that offered ventilation, privacy, and a place for daily chores. Some houses were modest, others elaborate, with multiple rooms, second stories, and private wells. Even indoor latrines were not uncommon, connected directly to the city's covered sewage drains. This attention to hygiene was far ahead of its time. Kitchens featured clay hearths, where meals were prepared with grains, lentils, fish, and possibly chicken. Mortar and pestles have been found, alongside storage jars, ovens, and cooking pots, revealing a cuisine that was both practical and flavorful. Tools, technology, and craftsmanship. Tools were made from bronze and copper. Chisels, knives, axes, fishhooks, even saws with teeth crafted to precision. Metallurgy was advanced. Furnaces, crucibles, and slag remains show that artisans melted and cast metal using sophisticated techniques. Even mirrors made of polished bronze have been unearthed, a glimpse of personal grooming and self-awareness. Children and play. Children were not forgotten. Archaeologists have discovered terracotta figurines of animals, miniature carts, and spinning tops, toys that echoed the universality of childhood joy. Some toys had moving parts, and others were weighted to return upright, showing a keen eye for balance and motion. Art, beauty, and symbolism. Indus artisans were masters of beauty and precision. They crafted bangles of terracotta, shell, and stone, combs of bone and ivory, and beads of carnelian, lapis lazuli, and agate, some as tiny as a millimeter in diameter. Their pottery, both well-made and hand-shaped, was elegant, often painted in red and black, with geometric patterns and stylized animals. These were not just decorative. They reflected a society that celebrated aesthetic detail and craftsmanship. Seals and symbols. Perhaps the most iconic artifacts of the Indus Valley are its seals. Made from steatite, these small square plaques were often carved with animal figures, like the famous unicorn, bull, or elephant, and lines of symbols that remain undeciphered. Were they used in trade? Did they represent names, clans, or even deities? Some scholars believe they were identity markers, or tokens in a kind of early administrative system. No kings, no conquests, and here's the mystery. Unlike Mesopotamia and Egypt, no grand palaces have been found, no royal tombs, no massive temples, no statues of rulers. There are no inscriptions boasting of conquests, no glorified kings, and no clear evidence of a centralized monarchy. It appears the Indus people may have governed through local councils, guilds, or community assemblies, a system focused more on order and function rather than domination. A culture in harmony. What emerges is a picture of a society that prized cleanliness, efficiency, and collective harmony. They lived without visible hierarchies, without armies, and without massive monuments to ego. Perhaps this was their greatest achievement. Not just the bricks and drains, but the quiet dignity of their daily life. In the end, it's not the silence of the ruins that speaks. It's the lives that once filled them. The Indus Valley Civilization was a civilization of the people. Practical, peaceful, profound. Chapter 5. Language and Religion. The silent code and sacred symbols. They built cities with precision, traded with distant lands, lived in homes with running water. And yet, we do not know their names, their songs, or their stories. The Indus Valley Civilization remains one of history's quietest giants, and nowhere is that silence louder than in their language and religion. The undeciphered script. Over 4,000 inscriptions have been found, etched onto seals, pottery, tools, amulets, and tablets. They feature a compact system of over 400 unique symbols. Some symbols resemble fish, arrows, trees, or humans. Others are entirely abstract. The inscriptions are short, often just 5 to 10 characters long, always cleanly carved, always intentional. But to this day, no one can read them. There is no bilingual key, no equivalent of the Rosetta Stone, and no long inscriptions to analyze sentence structure. Scholars have debated for decades. Was it a language or a symbolic code? Was it Dravidian? Proto-Munda? Something lost to time? AI and statistical analyses have shown that the symbols follow rules similar to written languages, but we remain locked outside their meaning. It is one of the greatest unsolved linguistic puzzles in human history. Seals and sacred imagery. Beyond the symbols lie the images, rich in meaning, and perhaps ritual in nature. The famous Pashupati seal is one of the most enigmatic artifacts. A horned figure, seated cross-legged in a yogic pose, surrounded by animals, elephants, tigers, rhinos, and buffalo. Some scholars link this to a proto-Shiva figure, known later in Hindu tradition as the Lord of Beasts, or Pashupati. If true, this may be the earliest visual representation of yoga and a spiritual philosophy that would echo through millennia. Rituals without temples. Strangely, no massive temples or altars have been found. No towering ziggurats like Mesopotamia. No stone idols like ancient Egypt. Yet, spirituality was clearly a part of daily life. The Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro, carefully constructed with waterproof bricks and bitumen, is believed to have been used for ritual purification. Its scale and meticulous design suggest collective ritual, possibly linked to cleansing, renewal, or spiritual elevation. Animal symbolism and totemism. Animals played a profound role in Indus belief. The bull, a symbol of strength and fertility, appears on dozens of seals. The elephant, revered for its wisdom, and the enigmatic unicorn, possibly mythical or symbolic, show up again and again. These creatures were not just livestock. They may have been sacred beings, clan emblems, or totems representing cosmic forces. The recurrence of animal motifs hints at a nature-centric spirituality, perhaps grounded in animism, ancestor worship, or early shamanic traditions. Amulets, figurines, and fertility symbols. Terracotta figurines of female figures, often with exaggerated hips and intricate jewelry, suggest a focus on fertility and motherhood. Some may have been goddess figures, while others were likely household deities or charms. Amulets, carved stones, and miniature idols have been found in homes, suggesting a belief in protective magic, ancestral spirits, or personal guardianship. The mystery remains, with no deciphered texts and no grand inscriptions to guide us. The religion of the Indus Valley remains speculative, yet tantalizingly close. Was it a precursor to Hinduism? Did it influence Buddhist or Jain thought? Or was it something entirely unique, now lost to history? We may never hear the prayers of the Indus people, but their symbols still speak. In every seal, in every figurine, in every carefully carved glyph, there lies a message, waiting to be understood. Chapter 6. Trade and Economy. The Web of Ancient Commerce. In the ancient world, isolation meant stagnation. But the Indus Valley Civilization was anything but isolated, an economy on the move. The Harappans built an economy powered by both innovation and connection. Goods and ideas moved freely between their major cities: Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, Lothal, Dholavira, and beyond. Inland, bullock carts carried pottery, grains, and textiles across dusty trade routes. Along the rivers, especially the Indus, Ravi, and Ghaggar Hakra, flat-bottomed boats ferried goods between urban centers. Harappan ports like Lothal, located near the Gulf of Cambodge, hint at oceanic trade, a sign that these people not only embraced the river, but also sailed the sea. Meluha, the Indus connection, far to the west, in the land between the Tigris and Euphrates. The Mesopotamians wrote of a mysterious trading partner, Meluha. Meluha was described as a distant, wealthy land that sent boats laden with exotic goods. Most scholars now believe that Meluha was none other than the Indus Valley Civilization. Mesopotamian records mention Meluhan traders, translators, and even Meluhan settlements in cities like and Susa. This wasn't just a one-time exchange. It was a sustained commercial relationship, reaching across nearly 2,000 kilometers. What was traded? From the Indus Valley, they exported lapis lazuli from Badakhshan, a vivid blue gemstone prized across the ancient world, carnelian beads, carefully polished and drilled with astonishing precision, ivory, shells, and finely crafted pottery, and cotton textiles, possibly the world's earliest known use of cotton in fabric. In return, they imported tin, essential for making bronze, silver, likely from Afghanistan or Iran, possibly spices, wood, or exotic animals. These exchanges show that the Indus people weren't just consumers. They were key nodes in a global trade web. Standardization and economic regulation. What made such a vast trade network possible? Trust and standardization. Across the entire civilization, merchants used uniform weights and measures, often cubical stones, calibrated with remarkable precision. These weights suggest central oversight or community regulation of trade, an early glimpse of what might have been proto-economic policy. Seals with animal motifs and glyphs were likely used to mark ownership, certify goods, or track inventory, possibly even functioning as merchant logos or business signatures. Ports, warehouses, and economic hubs. The city of Lothal provides some of the clearest evidence of maritime commerce. It featured a large, rectangular dockyard, possibly the world's first known, complete with sluice gates and drainage systems. Nearby, grain silos and warehouses stored goods waiting for shipment. These weren't random stacks of trade. This was organized logistics, customs-like management, and strategic planning. In a world without coinage, they may have used barter, weight-based trade, or sealed ledgers to manage transactions. The living legacy. Remarkably, echoes of the Harappan economic system still linger today. In parts of South Asia, traditional weight measures, like radi, tola, and sir, may trace their roots back to Harappan standards. The emphasis on measurement, fairness, and order in commerce was not just a cultural trait, it was a civilizational cornerstone. The economy of the Indus Valley wasn't just about exchange, it was about connection. From the deserts of Mesopotamia to the deltas of Gujarat, they forged a network of movement, trust, and mutual prosperity. And in doing so, the Harappans gave the ancient world something rare, a silent economy that spoke volumes. Chapter 7. The Mysterious Decline. A civilization grows silent. Around 1900 BCE, something began to change in the cities of the Indus Valley. The once vibrant streets grew quiet. Urban grids lost their symmetry. The iconic baked bricks were no longer uniform. Drainage systems fell into disrepair. By 1300 BCE, the great cities, Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, Dhalavira, were abandoned. But what happened to this vast civilization? The disappearance of the Indus Valley Civilization remains one of the greatest puzzles in human history. Unlike many ancient collapses, there were no signs of conquest, no smoldering ruins, no mass graves. Instead, the decline appears to have been gradual, fragmented, and eerily quiet. Theory 1. Climate change and monsoon collapse. Around 2000 BCE, the Indian monsoon began to weaken. Recent geological and paleoclimatic studies suggest that monsoon rainfall, vital for crops and water supply, declined sharply in the centuries that followed. Without reliable rain, agriculture suffered. Wells dried up, harvests shrank, and the urban economy, dependent on surplus food, could no longer sustain itself. Cities built on abundance were now crumbling under scarcity. Theory 2. The Vanishing Rivers. The Gagar-Hakra Mystery. Some scholars believe that the ancient Saraswati River, described in Vedic texts, was actually the Gagar-Hakra, a once mighty river that nourished dozens of Harappan settlements. Satellite data confirms that this river may have dried up between 2000 to 1500 BCE, possibly due to tectonic shifts that redirected its flow or a dwindling glacial source. As the river vanished, entire cities along its banks were left without water, forcing mass migrations and economic collapse. Theory 3. Environmental degradation and overexploitation. The Indus people were skilled agriculturalists, but with growth came pressure. Centuries of farming may have depleted the soil, while deforestation for fuel and bricks could have damaged the ecosystem. Salinization, caused by excessive irrigation in arid lands, may have made farmland infertile over time. It's possible that the civilization undermined its own foundation, a slow decline driven by the very system that once sustained it. Theory 4. Tectonic disruptions and earthquakes. The region sits near several fault lines. Some researchers suggest that a major tectonic event could have altered the course of the Indus and its tributaries, cutting off water sources and disrupting trade. Earthquakes may have damaged cities, while shifting rivers left once thriving centers stranded and dry. Theory 5. Gradual migration, not catastrophe. Rather than a sudden fall, the Indus Valley may have experienced a slow transformation. As conditions worsened, people may have migrated eastward, toward the more stable and wetter Ganges basin. There, early settlements grew, and may have seeded the cultures that followed, including those of the Vedic period. The civilization didn't vanish. It evolved, quietly absorbed into new ways of life. A silent fade, not a violent fall. What makes the decline of the Indus Valley so haunting is its absence of destruction. No war, no fire, no royal edicts marking a final breath. Just a long, slow unraveling of order. A civilization that, like the river it depended on, simply changed course. Sometimes, the greatest stories in history are not those of sudden collapse, but of gradual silence. The Indus Valley Civilization did not end with a bang, but with a whisper carried by the winds of time. Chapter 8. Legacy of the Indus Valley, the civilization that echoes still. Though the cities of the Indus Valley were swallowed by time, their legacy endures, not just in museums or buried ruins, but in the fabric of daily life across South Asia today. Urban genius that outlived its age. The people of the Indus Valley pioneered ideas that would shape city building for millennia. Grid-based urban planning, standardized construction materials, drainage and sanitation systems, centralized granaries and water storage. These innovations didn't vanish. They were absorbed into the evolving cities of later cultures. Archaeologists note similarities in layout and civic design in Vedic settlements and later in Mauryan cities, like Pataliputra. Even today, many traditional villages across India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan exhibit clustered living, communal wells, and alley networks that echo Harappan patterns. Symbols, rituals, and cultural threads. Artistic traditions of the Indus have left their fingerprints on folk art, textile designs, and religious symbolism. The people leaf, bull motifs, and dancing figures found on seals reappear in folk rituals and decorative art. The practice of ritual bathing, a central part of Indus spiritual life, finds echoes in the Hindu concept of purity and pilgrimages to sacred rivers. The horned, meditating figure from the famous Pashupati seal draws parallels with Shiva and yogic traditions that flourish to this day. Craftsmanship passed through generations. Harappan artisans were masters of their craft, working in carnelian, steatite, bronze, and ceramics. Today, you can still find pottery styles, bead-making techniques, and metalwork in regions once part of the Indus world, unchanged in essence after thousands of years. It's not just an archaeological echo, it's a living tradition. Weights, measures, and the idea of order. The Indus people established standardized systems of weight and measure, vital for trade, fairness, and order. These systems were so reliable. They were adopted by successor civilizations, and variations still exist in rural marketplaces across South Asia today. Legacy in the mind and spirit. Beyond brick and seal, the Indus legacy may live in the values that thread through South Asian life. A respect for ritual purity and balance, a sense of communal life without glorified rulers, a tradition of coexistence with nature, rivers, and animals, an ancient rhythm that pulses beneath modern life. The Indus Valley Civilization may have fallen silent, but its whispers are still heard. In the architecture of a courtyard, the rhythm of a spinning wheel, the splash of ritual bathing, and the carvings on a village wall. It shaped not only cities, but civilizations. It laid the foundations for South Asia's cultural soul. In every quiet street of Mohenjo-Daro, in every ripple of the Indus, the legacy lives on. Outro and reflection. The Indus Valley Civilization remains one of the greatest enigmas of the ancient world. They built clean, organized cities, traded with distant lands, and lived seemingly without war or hierarchy. And yet, they left no texts, no tombs, no monuments to themselves. Who were they? Why did they fall? And what wisdom did they take with them? As we continue to excavate, analyze, and imagine, we inch closer to the truth. Until then, the silent bricks of Mohenjo-Daro whisper of a time when humanity carved a peaceful world beside the river. A world ahead of its time. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more ancient history and hidden civilizations.